Thanks for joining us here on PM Express. You may have noticed, you may not have noticed, but there is an unrest on the labor front. The sheer numbers of various groups either calling a strike or in the process of doing so, or actually are on strike. We're going to be looking at why we have so many of these happening within the space of the last, 3 weeks? We've seen so many. Let's start with the biggest of them all, which really pitched the laboratory scientists against the doctors, the GMA. It became an all-out turf war as far as this claim of who has superiority in the medical field is concerned. It threatened lives across the country. Why? And that was the first one that we saw, the major one that we saw, where the laboratory scientists calling a strike in the last 3 weeks. The members, they went on a 1-week sit-down strike, in which really wreaked havoc to our health sector. And why did they call a strike? They claim that 2 people have been imposed on them. This is Comfort Nochi Teaching Hospital, to be very specific. The thing that you begin to see with all these strikes, once I lay out for you, a thread will begin to emerge. The thread of the agencies, government and management, who many of the concerns are directed at, not doing anything when the warnings are first issued, the ultimatums are first issued, and then the workers go on strike, it begins to bite, then they move into action. And then there's a crisis of a sort, there's an urgency to the resolution and attempt to resolve the matter. This is something that we saw here, because I personally remember weeks before the medical laboratory scientists went on strike, they had issued a statement complaining about what they believe to be the imposition of the 2 people on them, and that if nothing is done about it, they would have no choice, as they say, than to advise themselves. Nothing really happened until they then called the strike. And then, of course, we saw what happened, where the health sector was left in chaos. And then we saw the Senior Staff Association of University, this is just last week, also calling an indefinite strike, right? And what was their issue? They talked about Labour Commission had failed to resolve, delays in the payment of their Tier 2 pensions, but also working conditions generally is something that they were not happy about. Again, they had also warned that they will go on strike if nothing is done about it, and they indeed went on strike. The third one, we had the Technical University Teachers Association. They had just declared a strike. I'm talking about TUTA. They just declared a strike beginning today, right? And what is their issue? That again, that they've been converted from polytechnics to, to tertiary, a full university status, and that a lot of the conditions attached to that transition hasn't been met. And so they had raised this for so long, they believe this is the only means they can use to get the employers' attention to resolving their issue. What you begin to see is that as far as the workers are concerned, they believe strike is the language government understands. If you don't call a strike, nothing happens. And so they'll give you the ultimatum. And then nothing will happen. They'll call a strike. We begin to see the impact, and then it's resolved. So you begin to ask the question, if it can be resolved after the strike, why didn't the authorities, the NLC, resolve it before the strike? Averting the strike, preventing it in the first place. What is the difficulty there? We'll get into that when we talk. And then obviously, if you look at the 2 tax concerns, teaching, and these are the directives, by the way, the withdrawal, what does it affect? Teaching, invigilation, marking of exam script. And they choose the timing to have maximal impact, because the kids, the students are about to write exams, right? And now, just today, we saw another statement from the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association of Pantan. And this has been a long-standing issue, right? And they've also announced a reluctant strike starting from 16 June. When is 16 June? Today is 14. So we are talking about what? Wednesday. Are we going to sit for this to play out? They actually call a strike and then they'll go and resolve it. We'll see. We'll talk about that. But what are they talking about? Their concern is unlawful land encroachment by private persons and land guards. If you are in this country, you must have heard this issue about the Pantan. The workers there have been complaining for years. They've demonstrated. So they say, okay, if you're not going to solve it, we're going to call a strike. Again, coming back to the same weapon that the workers deploy. Question is, what is going to happen to this? Are we going to sit for this to happen? There's a big one that we'll talk about shortly. But the GRNA have laid out what their demands are. The demands are pretty clear. Construct a wall around the hospital, they say. Operationalize the police post at the hospital. This is the second thing. Evict strangers and land guards from the hospital premises because they believe it's affecting their job. If not, on Wednesday, we withdraw our services. And then there is CROCSAC, right? This is the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana. And they have given an ultimatum to government, right? The ultimatum will expire on June 18. June 18, if I'm not mistaken, this down this week, right? And their point is, especially in the handling of their Tier 2 pensions, fix it, or we are again going to call a strike. Can you imagine if the Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana calls a strike? The entire government will grind to a halt. But they've been warning about this, complaining at least for the last 3 weeks. CROCSAC had been constantly complaining about these concerns. They say the finance ministry is controlling the pensions, their pensions, monies, and they don't want that to happen. They wanted to return to the appropriate agency specified by the law. So why is this not being addressed? We're waiting for June 8th things to dawn on us, and then a strike. The entire government machinery grinds to a halt, and then there's a crisis. And so we're going to be looking into all these. I've run through several, 5 either have called or are warning that they will call with specific dates for that to happen. Tonight, we're going to be getting into why all these strikes. And the thread I said you should pay attention to. The thread of warnings, this one is a warning, right? And they've told you when you're going to go on a strike. Okay, so why is it that up until now nothing has happened? They issued this 14-day ultimatum 14 days ago, right? And yet, this is about to dawn on us. We're going to get into that. Why these appear to be a recurring theme as far as the industrial labor front is concerned, and why the agencies like the NLC, the government, employers generally, and management appear not to deal with it until the strike actually happens. Stay with me. After the break, my guests will be seated. We'll get into these specific matters. And thank you for joining us here on PM Express. My guest joining us for tonight's conversation is Dr. Akurugu Brigandi, who joins us in the studio. Thank you very much, sir. He's the president of the Technical University Teachers Association, TUTA. And you called a strike today, correct?
Yes, the strike is on.
It's on, okay. We'll get into that very shortly. Also joining us is Dr. Abu Rahmani, and he is the president of the Ghana Association of Medical Lab Scientists, and they were on strike for a few weeks, if I'm not mistaken, more than a week, over the concerns that he had at CAF, which spread nationally, and then allied health workers also joined them in that particular strike. Also joining us is Ben Arthur. He's a labor consultant who helped us navigate through the challenges, and I'm delighted to say that Mr. Ofusua Samoa, the Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission, will also join us via Zoom. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time here on PM Express. Because TUTA is the latest of the lot that I just illustrated. You are on strike from today.
Yes.
So all lecturers on the campuses of the technical universities want to work?
They are not supposed to work.
Okay.
And actually, they are not working.
And the reasons are?
The reasons are 5.
Okay.
The first one has to do with our conditions of service. As technical universities, we're expecting that shortly after being converted, government will put us on the existing university conditions whilst we wait for new negotiation. We've been following government to do that for so many months, but government is very, very reluctant. Even though government had gone ahead to sign communique with us, that is what it was going to do. But implementation remained a mirage till date. The second one has to do with our scheme of service. Okay. Indeed, most of the universities use the scheme of service, that appears, or that is far, far, far lower than what technical universities are expected to do. For instance, in terms of publication for promotion, the technical university lecturer is expected to publish 6 articles or 6 papers and wait for 6 years before it can be promoted from one level to the other, whether from assistant lecturer, no, whether from lecturer to senior lecturer or senior lecturer to associate prof and then to full prof. But in most of the universities, it is 4 papers and then 4 years of waiting. And we do not understand why this should be the case as far as technical universities.
So they're almost treating you as a second-class university lecturers.
It appears so. That may be the right word that we should use for our situation. Then we have the issue of Tier 2 pension payment. We were made to understand that members were going to contribute for 10 good years before they will start enjoying. And it started in 2010. So 2020 was exactly 10 years. And we're expecting our members to start enjoying this Tier 2 pension. Unfortunately, all our members who have gone on retirement from 2020 are still not being paid. And we have been following government on this, and it has not yet taken place. Then the other one has to do with program accreditation. Anytime that technical universities, and even when we're polytechnics, we send our programs to the National Council for Tertiary Education, we pass it through them to the National Accreditation Board. It usually takes a very long time. Sometimes it can lie there for a year before it is being attended to. And even when it's being attended to, you are asked to do this or that, do this or that, and it could even go beyond a year. And we observe that it is not even the case with other universities, especially even private universities. So we just felt that it appears our regulatory bodies are not interested in supporting technical universities to grow academically. So these are the 5 main issues that has compelled us to get to this stage.
Give me a timeline. How long have you been fighting for these?
With regard to the conditions of service, it even started when we were polytechnics.
Okay.
So conditions of service
put a time frame on it. How long has this been?
2006. It expired in 2006.
2006?
When we were POTAC, that is polytechnics.
And they haven't renewed it?
No.
So you've been asking for this for what? This is
from 2006 till the time we're converted.
Okay. So this is more than a decade. This is what?
Yes. So many years.
This is at least 14 years it's been?
Certainly.
Okay. Have you been to the Labour Commission?
Yes. We've been to Labour Commission, especially when we were converted, that we wanted to put on the existing university conditions pending new negotiations. At the point in time, somewhere in 2019, the Labour Commission even ruled in our favor that we should be put on the existing university conditions in terms of allowances and the like. Government did not comply to the rulings.
In these meetings with the Labour Commission,
yes,
there must have been a government representative, because this must have been,
yes,
negotiations.
Any time that we are appearing at the Labour Commission, the government representatives are there.
Yeah.
And they were there when they ruled in our favor. And when government failed to honor its part of the ruling, we wrote back to the National Labour Commission, reminding them that government did not comply to the rule, the rule of the commission. Then we were expecting to hear something from them. We never heard anything.
Okay. Okay. And I must say that this is not the first time you'll be calling a strike over some of these issues.
No.
Okay. So this is not the first time. Okay. So which means that the issues haven't been resolved. And I guess we'll come to what this means in terms of the trust in government or your employers to fix the problem shortly. But I want to bring in Dr. Ramani with the laboratory scientists. They were also on strike recently. Doc, give us an update on that. You've called off your strike now, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Is it because all your concerns have been addressed?
Oh, not at all. In fact, the concerns are as they were before, and they are still as they are now. Our only, let me say, confidence is the fact that Parliament Select Committee on Health has taken up the issue. To be sincere with you, you mentioned the National Labour Commission, and I believe maybe we'll go along, we'll go more into it. But if you look at our issue, we've been with the Ministry of Health, we've been with the National Labour Commission. It looks like you go, they talk to you, they give you work, and after everything, nothing happens. So that has been the system. But this time around, we've had a firm assurance from our honorable members, and we know very strongly that they will be able to this and come out with something good for us.
So the only reason why you've called up this strike is not because the Labour Commission or the authorities at CAF or government, but because of the intervention of the Parliamentary Select Committee.
Absolutely. In fact, I can say strongly that most of our members, if it were the National Labour Commission, I'm sure we'll still be on strike by now.
Explain to me why there's so much mistrust for the Labour Commission.
Well, we've been there before. We were there almost 2017, 2018. The issue that we presented, some of them were actually part of what we presented this time around. And we believe strongly that if we had actually had a solution from the National Labour Commission, we wouldn't have been here by this time. Okay, this issue would have been sorted out completely or resolved completely. But you have the situation whereby the National Labour Commission will issue a directive indicating that your strike action is illegal. And by the way, National Labour Commission has never issued a directive to any legal strike action before. But to issue a directive, they will call you to come for the negotiation. You will go to the negotiation table, and you will get to a situation whereby you will be the one begging. I mean, virtually begging on your knees, trying to get the issue resolved. And it goes on, and then when you are tired, you also lose. And when you lose steam, you go back to your normal state and then try to mobilize members again to come up again. So National Labour Commission has not been able to solve any of our issues that we have presented to them. In fact, it is still on their books as we speak now. And if you go back to just about a few weeks ago, you realize that they issue a statement that will resume work, followed up with a court injunction. I can tell you that today is the day that our come and receive a directive from National Labour Commission, something at least to show that they are concerned. But if they were supposed to be handling the issue, so today will be the day that they would have given us some hint of them doing something. So personally, and for most of our members, National Labour Commission has not been a place where it's good for solving most of our issues.
Okay. Is this something you agree with, the inability of the Labour Commission, the mistrust for the Labour Commission?
I strongly agree with him because similar situations. Because when in 2019, the National Labour Commission ruled in our favor, government refused. We went back to them. They simply did not do anything until when we declared another strike, that they started inviting us.
So I noticed
our
that
people,
I think Friday, the Labour Commission wrote to you.
Yes, they only extended an invitation letter to us in which they stated that we should refrain from strike.
Okay, stay with me because I want to bring in the Labour Commission's the executive secretary, myself, also someone who is joining us. So you've had the complaints that the Labour Commission almost has been restricted to issuing out invitations when the strike is due, or going to court, or declaring the strike illegal, or issuing rulings that nobody follows. It doesn't paint a good picture of a commission that really has any teeth to bite.
Yeah, good evening to your listeners and viewers. That's an unfortunate description or representation of the commission that we just issue invitations when strikes arrive and rush to the courts. That is not so. We rarely go to court to declare a strike illegal. Because I don't know, why are we not in court? We had notice of this on Friday, Thursday evening. If we were to rush in court, we would be in court by now. But we are not in court for one reason or the other. That is why we have invited them. And even in the letter, we said they are advised. You see, the case has come before us, and we know what is in it. That is why we choose our words advisedly. So we are hoping that they will come on Wednesday, which they have written to us to that effect that they will be there. And we'll have the issues of, you see, when we brought our case to the National Labour Commission, the Labour Commission issued a directive, and the government did not follow one party attention of the Labour Commission. That yes, you give a directive that we be paid this amount, or we should be engaged on our conditions of service. However, I mean, it has not been done over the period. Then the commission comes in, as in this case. You see, they were expecting that we would write an acknowledgement. Fair Wages and Salaries Commission are supposed to engage you on your conditions of service. You have got a complaint that they have not engaged you, and based on this, you want to go on a strike. The next thing for the commission to do is to write to the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission that we give a directive in 1919 or 2019 that you were supposed to do this within this particular period. Has it been done? If no, why? What is preventing you from doing it? You understand me? Now we say that tier 2 pension must be paid. Has it been paid? If it has not been paid, Mr. Finance Minister or Controller, why hasn't it been paid? Why has money been deducted and it has not been paid? These are the issues that we are going to engage them in. So I don't think that the mere fact that you wrote a letter to us that you were going on strike, or you were, we did not write an acknowledgement letter of what we have received, that doesn't mean we are not doing anything. Before we reply letters, we must make sure that we have our facts right.
I mean, but we're just hearing from the lab scientists and TUTAG, and at least for those two labor unions, but they both say they simply do not trust the Labour Commission to help them fix their problem because of previous experiences. That must concern you, that the people you're supposed to be intermediating with one side, they simply don't trust you as an arbiter that can fix their problems.
Oh, they do trust us. It's just because of where things have got to. But when it comes to a question of trust, people don't even trust the courts. People don't trust the president. People don't trust their headmasters. Some people don't even trust their wives. So, but the question is, what is there? You must deal with facts and not emotions. The fact is that the Labour Commission has been established by law to maintain industrial harmony by settling disputes, and that is what we are doing. So I don't think this is a question of trust.
Are you?
It's a question of...
Go on, please. Please make the point.
Yes, so on Wednesday, we'll look at the issue. I mean, if we had this letter, we just wrote another acknowledgement telling you we have received your letter, A, B, C, and D will be done. I don't think that has happened. What we have to do, yes, we have received your letter. Accordingly, that is why on Wednesday, we did not invite the striking lecturers alone. We have invited the Minister of Employment, who is in charge of pensions, because their tier 2 has to do with pensions. We have invited the Minister of Finance, because he's the custodian, he has all the money that were deducted and so on. And he is going to direct the controller to release any money if need be. We have invited the Ministry of Education, who are their employers, and the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, which deals with negotiating what we call conditions of service. So we have done all this to make sure that we have the problem solved once and for all. And that is what we are going to do on Wednesday. So when it comes to trust, they should have trust in us that we are going to work things out for them.
Does the conduct
because you go, employers will say when it goes against.
I mean,
I'm listening.
Does the conduct of the employer, because I've heard since we started this conversation, so many rulings, so many interventions from you that the employer has failed to implement, which then leads down the line to a strike. Does that lack of desire to implement your rulings and interventions by the employer, does it frustrate you? Does it incapacitate you in your in the ability to do the work?
It does not incapacitate us, except that sometimes it's frustrating. Because when the employer fails, right, to go by the directives, we have to go to court and enforce it. So it's sometimes frustrating, but it is not incapacitating us in any way.
Let me ask you, have you ever been to court against the employer before?
Severally.
Okay.
Against the employer, against government. Yes.
Okay. I mean, stay with me.
Make sure that
they enforce.
Rulings, our directives are obeyed and complied.
Ms. Atta, I think we have a clearer picture what the problem is.
Go to court severally.
Okay. I think we have a clearer picture what the problem is.
Definitely.
So based on what you've heard, first of all, diagnose for me what you believe to be the issue here.
Well,
because of all the strikes that we've listed, all of them have common traits. Labor Commission, employer, workers, there's simply there's simply not trust between them. What have you noticed?
Well, I've noticed a lot. I have had the opportunity to conduct research in that area. As a consultant, I deal with the National Labor Commission and other institutions as well. One of the key issues that breeds the feeling of not trusting the National Labor Commission is not just about capacity. It's about how people see strikes and how negotiations should be done. For example, I was expecting that when Mr. President for TUTAG was talking, he would say that we have been invited by National Labor Commission, and based on industrial relations practice, we will call off that strike simply because you are going to go into negotiation. And the law will not allow an employer to intimidate you. It does not also allow workers to also intimidate the employer. So it says that when you are coming to negotiate, come and negotiate under section in good faith. So what it means is that don't come with your rules, coming to tie
with a gun to the head.
That is the point. That is the principle. You know, when it comes to industrial relations, we don't see enemies at the workplace. They are partners. But structurally, by law that establishes the National Labor Commission, there is a small defect somewhere, and the ministry has already taken steps to review the labor law to correct some of these things. Let me give you one typical example. If we had fashioned the National Labor Commission in such a way that it orders, you could only set it aside upon an appeal, or if you did not obey, the other party could cite you for contempt. If we had given that powers to National Labor Commission, I am very certain that nobody could take its orders for granted, because you can't simply say that you are setting aside orders from the court. So if we have given it powers of the High Court in terms of its proceedings in dispute resolution and the rest, then we must as well, in the revision of the labor law, clothe them with that power to play that role very, very effectively. That is where they also have a challenge, where they have to also sometimes, in enforcing their own orders, they have to go to court to get it enforced. You could see from the executive secretary and from my colleague and the other gentleman, Dr. Abu, who spoke, the trend is the same. If National Labor Commission has given an order and one party is not complying, now it's up to the other party to take that order and follow it up to court for compliance, for enforcement. And I'm trying to relate to my dear brother that is the way forward. You go for enforcement, because once it's an order from National Labor Commission, you don't also expect that the National Labor Commission will take an order that it has made and say that one party is not following it. So they themselves have taken it. I'm coming.
The ruling, they should enforce their own order.
No, I'm coming. That they have taken it to go and enforce it. No. It's a difficult thing to do. Sometimes if you do it that way, one party will see you as very biased. One party will see you as very...
So you expect the workers to...
Yes, the aggrieved party. The aggrieved party has that power to take those orders and go for enforcement. You see, you are the impartial entity. You have listened to parties, you have had ruling, and now you're going to enforce it against one. you become impartial. You lose your impartiality. Next time, nobody will trust you. So National Labour Commission is cautioned in that aspect. That's why people see it as if it's not biting. If it were to apply its full brakes on people, I'm sure the pictures will be different. Now, coming back home to address some of the concerns that the two gentlemen you spoke to had related. For TUTAG, he spoke of conditions of service. Mm-hmm. He also spoke of the agreement that they were expecting to sign. And he mentioned one thing, not in clear words, but he meant relativity or disparity. In Ghana, because of our pay structure in the public sector, everybody believes that if I have a first degree doing this work, it does not matter where I have been placed. We have to be paid the same. So we have grown with that mentality, knowing that if I am a secondary school leaver and I'm in the police service, the way and manner I should be paid, my colleague also in Cocoa Board possibly should also receive the same thing.
But this is governed by law.
I'm coming. It will take some time for us to move away.
No, but this is governed by law.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to get to that. When you sign a collective agreement that says that this and that must be done, it is more or less like a law, as you are saying, that is binding on the signatories to implement it. So from that aspect, I understand. But the best way to get their concerns addressed is to go and negotiate with the parties. I'm coming. I also understand the frustration where workers feel that, we are not getting our way. In all that he related, he spoke of other things that is making them go on strike that is unrelated to even the employer. For example, he spoke of accreditation. That when they send the accreditation to the National Accreditation Board, it takes quite a long time, for them to get some feedback. But when it comes to the private entities, the private investors, they get feedback as fast as possible. These are matters that worry staff, that worry lecturers. But you could see that it fits into the decision to strike. But it is not directly related to the employer. I hope you get it. If you want to go into details, but that is not the solution. For me, the solution is that my good brother and his executives should calm down. Now that National Labour Commission itself has invited you and invited the other parties, that is all that everybody is looking for.
Here's a big challenge.
And it's a good platform
Here's a big challenge you face. Historically, issues are only addressed for labor only when they go on strike.
It is not so, but it appears that it is when people go on strike that they feel that they have the edge to push and push better.
No, I'm telling you, it's only when they go on strike that the issue is addressed. No,
it is not always so.
Always, mostly, in most cases.
It's not always so.
In the last 1 month, I just cut off 5 instances. In all the 5 instances, what I've said applies. So there are two. Just a second. This is evidential because last 1 month there are 2 threats to strike pending now. One by GRNA on 16th, right? Waiting to happen. The one by Clocksat, the big one, 18th of June. We are sitting here.
Also waiting.
We are sitting here. It will be in next 1 week. Those 2 will go on strike. You will see. When I'm letting they go on strike, Labour Commission, government will call.
I understand that.
Isn't that the biggest problem that workers know? The language, and you hear the workers say this all the time, TUC, the language the employers understand is when you strike. If you don't strike, 16 years they've been fighting. Nothing will happen.
No, I was going to that fact, but you didn't allow me to develop my point. That it appears that unless there's a strike action, people don't feel that there's a need to push.
Yeah.
That is what I'm alluding to. But that is not what brings the solution. Because I'm coming. It does not bring the solution because whatever you do, you definitely get back to the negotiating table and still go through what it takes to negotiate. And follow the trend. Go to National Labour Commission, follow the cases. Yes, you may go on strike to exert some pressure, that becomes coercion. That is the essence of strike. It's a collective action. If it were not a tool to use, it wouldn't have been put in the labor law. So industrial relations practitioners understand the essence of strikes. That's why it is legislated.
But it appears that's the only option.
It is not the only option that employers do understand. Sometimes staying the course and pushing it, you're able to get better results. For example, I'm being realistic. Let me give you a typical example.
2006, they've been fighting this.
Let me give you a typical example. That as a union leader, you go and meet the leadership. You go for the negotiations. You see what is in the matter. Now you come back and you explain to your followers, quote unquote. They don't seem to appreciate. Sometimes after going to negotiate and going back, you are afraid to even tell them the results because they might think that you have been compromised. But when you went and you were told the realities on the ground, as the leader, it is not because you compromise. You have to also confer with the realities. But when you are going back to your constituency, there's also the pressure. So sometimes it's not just leadership who go and say we are going to declare strike. It's the frustration of the people that they lead that also feeds into it.
Let me bring to
but strikes have not proven to be very effective in getting all solutions.
Let me bring to
negotiation.
You agree?
Negotiation is the best way. Talk the matters out, dialogue.
It is really difficult to hide from the reality. When you started telling him that he's trying not to be realistic, I just felt that that is exactly what the situation is. In this country of ours, almost every worker knows that if you are looking for something from your employer and you don't go on strike, you are most likely not to get it. They will only listen to you when you are on strike. You can write so many reminders or so many appeals. They may not even acknowledge receipt of those documents. For instance, we have been following government over the years to just get us onto the negotiation table for our conditions of service. This never happened. The Minister of Labor, the Minister of Employment invited us for a meeting today when we started the strike. This is a letter.
There you have it.
This is a letter inviting us for negotiation.
And you only got it today?
Today.
When your strike began?
Yes.
Meanwhile, I saw your notice of strike last week, Monday.
Yes. And actually, we gave the notice on the 1st of June.
Okay.
To the Labor Commission. So it is not an appearance that Ghanaians feel if you don't go and strike, you will not get what you want.
Did you send a copy of that notice to NLC?
Yes.
Last week, on the 1st of June?
On the 1st of June. They received it on the 1st of June.
But they only invited you last Friday?
That was when they saw a draft copy of our press statement.
I saw that too.
Still under review. Because if you look at that document...
It was embargoed to, I think, the 10th.
It wasn't even signed.
True.
And it was only on our letterhead. It had no signature and no author. And that was a document the National Labour Commission saw.
That moved them to...
Yes, and then they wrote inviting us for the meeting.
Strikes work, even threats of strike.
Yes, even threats of strike work.
That's the evidence.
It's not that...
It is. No, nobody says it does not. What I'm trying to tell you is that if you want a very effective way of getting matters resolved, and I'm telling you that even if you go on strike, what it will bring to you is the attention and the coercion. You will go back to dialogue.
No, that's not true. The lab scientist example shows
you
that
go back to dialogue.
Got the parliament involved. And
yes, but it brings you to dialogue. What I'm trying to tell you is
Parliament would never have come in if they had not gone.
You have not understood. What I'm trying to say is that whatever mechanism you use, the most effective one that brings the solution is dialogue. So when you go on strike, what the strike does is that it brings the attention, and people maybe who possibly might have forgotten of your issue now wake up and are ready to attend to. But it is the dialogue, continue to engage each other. That is where the solution is.
Yeah, finally, I want to go back onto that.
Dialogue does not work. Dialogue only begins to work either when you have threatened a strike or when you are on strike. But if you just keep going to them with dialogue, you will never make progress. That is the reality.
Dr. Ramani, do you agree with that view from the lab science? Is that your experience with the lab scientist strike? Dr. Abu Ramani, I think you've muted your Zoom. Kindly unmute for me.
Yes, let me say that strikes are very important and they solve solutions. They bring solutions to our problems. If I give you the chronology of events, and if we were sitting down doing nothing, we wouldn't have gotten any results or anything from the ministry or even from any institution to even listen to us. From 2016, we went to National Labour Commission with our national laboratory policy. It is still there with them. It has not been resolved. 2018, Kolebu issue there by our directorate and all the issues concerning our welfare and our growth were all put before various institutions. Now, if you look at our situation, with us as what do you call it? Professionals who are quite important when it comes to health, you expect that when issues come up, within 3 days, the ministry is supposed to call for negotiation. And if negotiations do not resolve the issue, then National Labour Commission comes in. Within 1 week, the labour system puts in practice, whereby within a short period of time, this when there are issues between two parties in the health sector, it's supposed to be having resolved. But here you sit, and the ministry is fully aware to go there, you speak to them, you even go and meet them, have negotiation, and they will pretend as if they have your issue at hand. After some time, they forget about it. You give indication that you want to strike, and they will still sit and watch you. Once you start the action, then they said, no, it is illegal. But then, certainly, you have issues being resolved. The consultant says that we will certainly have to sit down and negotiate. When you negotiate without strike, I can assure you, you will not receive anything. It is very clear. For example, you have the National Labour Commission, which is supposed to be impartial in the situation in every situation. But you find out in our case, the National Labour Commission was issuing threats, going to what you call it, sack almost all laboratory scientists, going to stop their salary. I mean, you have a neutral body speaking like this. And what else do you expect membership to do? Membership will also take action. And the only action is that if you think I am not important, then I will show my importance. Okay, if the institutions that are there that are supposed to resolve the issues are not resolving the issues, then it's as if you are not important in the scheme of affairs. And if you are not important, then you have to lay down your tools so that the government or the institutions that are there will get to know that, yes, you are very, very important. So for me, I think strongly that strikes are very, very important. They are very important to push agencies and institutions to do the right thing. Why will the institutions sit down and wait till people strike? In the case of Mistrust, for example, these issues have been on the banner for a very long time. Our issues have been there. If I'll just give you an example. From 2016, the National Health Laboratory Policy has been there since 2016. So if you ask, how then would you get the National Labour Commission or the Ministry of Health or any other institution to push? I can tell you that it is after we've gone to the Parliament Select Committee on Health that these issues are coming up, and they are even seeking for documentation to see and then to be able to come up with something that is more okay for all of us. So I think that strikes are very important.
Okay.
And I know as a consultant, you say that no, maybe that is their job. Consultants don't always support strike action. But the army on the ground, the only thing we know that the government will listen or institutions will listen is to strike.
Let me find out from Mr. Fuso Sama with the NLC. Mr. Sama, on the two-tax strike, the president says they sent you the notice on the 1st of June. You only wrote to them when you saw their draft announcement of the strike. And then today, they've received another letter from the ministry on the day of the strike. Why did you have to wait to see the threat of strike before you responded to their issue? Hello, Mr. Sama. I think you've muted your Zoom. Kindly unmute for me. Mr. Sama, can I hear you? If you can unmute for me, please. Okay. I'll take a quick break. When I return, I'll get that clarity. And then we'll end by, so we know what the problem is now. The workers say strike is the only language government understands. The labor consultant says it shouldn't be. So what's the way forward? How do we haven't even seen the GMA. GMA, when they step into this matter, it's just something else. But there's a big one, CLOCSAC. They've served notice, 18th June. That's a big one. When CLOCSAC goes on strike, as a friend of mine will pan, they clog the system. When we return, we'll deal with that. Stay with me. And thank you very much for staying with us. As you can imagine, this has been a very, a heated conversation, but I'll delve into the heart of why we have so many strikes. And there are more in the pipeline, about to play out. I want to quickly bring in the executive of the National Labour Commission, who, of course, is with Mr. Sama. Mr. Sama, I was asking you, we heard from the workers that strike appears to be the only language you and the government understands, specifically to the two-tax strike. They wrote to you on the 1st of June. You only intervene with an invitation when you've seen their threat of strike. Why is that?
We do not, it is not true that we only act when there's a threat of strike or, they wrote, it was not just a letter informing us of their intention to go on strike. They made categorical statements about their pensions, about their conditions of service, right? So the next thing to do is for the commission to find out who is in charge in negotiating their conditions of service, who is in charge of the pensions that have been deducted and not have been paid, and all the other before we invite them. And you see, why are we inviting them to the commission? We are inviting them to assist the parties to resolve the issues in dispute. So we must identify the parties. We must identify what they are looking for before we sit them down. It is not just a matter of receiving a letter and immediately you write an acknowledgement and go ahead and deal with it. And these are ministries. Look at the ministries involved. We are bringing in finance ministry, we are bringing in employment, we are bringing in education, as well as other agencies like the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. So it was not just a matter of having received an ordinary letter and then you write an acknowledgement.
I'm sure you are also a government worker. You are a public service worker. Even you will admit, even you will admit strikes work.
Yes, it does. It's a very important tool for pressing your demand. A very strong tool, except that it must not be abused.
You think the workers are abusing it?
In some cases.
Okay. In which case would you say it's an abuse?
Oh, it's been abused several times. Recently, we had one. That is why we quickly have to rush to the courts. But where we can manage it without going to the court, we do, like in this case.
So there you have it. That is the Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission confirming that strikes do work. He says it's a very effective tool.
Yeah, but pressing home your demand. But we are talking about getting the matters resolved. Evans, get me right. Getting the matters resolved, the most effective way is dialogue.
Yeah, but the strike,
and I'm telling you that even if you take a gun,
the dialogue.
Even if you take a gun and point it at your employer, if you want resolution, you come back to the negotiating table.
The strike expedites the dialogue.
I'm not disputing that. I've already told you that it's an act of coercion. Coercion means that you are pushing the thing.
Okay.
But what has been proven to be very effective in getting the best out of the parties. Do you know why?
But I guess the argument is you won't have the dialogue.
It's a dialogue. No, they use the strike to prepare the dialogue.
True.
That is it.
So, yeah.
But the dialogue is the most effective means of getting
Let me
resolved.
ask him very quickly. So, you're gonna go on Wednesday.
Yes, so we're going to the Labour Commission on Wednesday.
Okay. Will you call off your strike whilst you do that?
Well, I wouldn't be able to say that because the decision to declare a strike or call off a strike is based on what Congress says. And our Congress is made of various executives in the technical universities. And secondly, I must say that the law says that when you can't be on strike when we start negotiation. Here is the case we haven't started yet. The Wednesday meeting is just an invitation for the discussion.
For the negotiation.
The negotiation. Well,
that is part of it.
Even if it is.
The discussion is the negotiation.
Because I know we don't negotiate at the Labour Commission. We have a place that the committee goes to negotiate. So for today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, if the strike is on, it cannot be declared as illegal.
Okay, so when you start on Wednesday, you call it off?
That will depend on how things go on Wednesday.
Okay.
Let me appeal to him.
Unfortunately, we don't have time.
1 second.
Wait, just a second.
1 second that there is a need to call the strike off. We are appealing to you to call the strike off, show the goodwill, go to the negotiating table and negotiate. You always have the right to call another strike.
Well,
but show that goodwill.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I mean, on the night where we heard the Labour Commission boss himself say strike is a very effective tool. We'll see if it indeed leads to some resolution on the back of two-tag and all this. But I need to say this. There is CROCSAC waiting to happen on June 18th. There is GRNA, the Ghana Registered Association. This is major, waiting to happen, I think, on Wednesday. If the authorities are listening, please pay attention to these dates because we don't want to have another crisis on our hands. Enjoy the rest of your evening.